Anna Zap is the host of the nationally syndicated Anna and Raven Show, which can be heard on 40 stations across the country and locally on Star 99.9, Today's Best Mix, and her show, as everyone knows and loves, the Anna and Raven Show. Where Anna Zap began and where her journey has taken her a bit. A bachelor's in communications from Pace University, a master's in the art of teaching from Sacred Heart University, a former adjunct professor of public speaking at Pace University, roots in stand-up comedy, pivoted to radio, and out of all of these things, her favorite role is mom. Things that Anna Zap loves: napping, eating pizza, and making a difference by raising awareness to organizations that she is committed to. She has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Make-A-Wish, Center for Family Justice, March of Dimes, United Way, Mikey's Way, Tiny Miracles, and many more. Anna Zap has a platform, and she uses it for change and for good. This puts her in a league of her own. Anna is dedicated to keep her listeners laughing every morning, but takes it a step farther, and she genuinely supports her community, and you're always up for being part of the conversation. And for that, we thank you. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to the dynamic and incredibly authentic Anna Zap.
Okay, I don't know if I can live up to that intro. Thank you, Nicole. I'm a big fan of Nicole. How about giving her a round of applause? When she started talking in the intro, I got all teary-eyed. I was like, I'm doing great. Everything's gonna be all right. And I was like, you know, and listening to these panelists, gosh, we are all in the same boat, right? And I wrote a speech. Usually I don't write speeches, I kind of just talk. You hear me, I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. But I actually wrote a speech, and because I'm nervous, and because it's way past my bedtime at 4:30 in the afternoon, I'm going to probably just read from it, okay? Are everybody cool with that?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you. But seriously, I want to thank the Greater Valley Chamber of Commerce for having me. This is an incredible event. What you do to support women is important, and thank you all for coming out here today and being here. And I'm going to talk honestly. I was hesitant to speak because there's a few reasons. One was when I saw the women that were speaking on the panel here, I was like, these women should be the keynote speaker. Like, their stories are amazing. They have stories to tell. And I just didn't think I could compete with what they had to offer. Because there's always that devil on your shoulder, right? That devil that tells you you're not good enough and you're gonna fail, and we'll get more to that guy later. But, you know, my strength is really, honestly, what Nicole is doing today. Because my job usually is get the story out of somebody else. Whether I'm interviewing Katy Perry and she's pregnant and she's got a new album coming out, or a mom that's local here just gave birth on the side of 95. Like, that's who I talk to. Like, that's my job. So I didn't really know if anybody would care enough to hear about my own story. And another factor that kind of made me hesitant to want to do this today, and I think that so many of us can probably relate to this, is time, right? Especially for women. It feels like we never have enough time. Finding the time to be here, finding the time to write this, and balancing my actual job and being a mom of 2 very active girls. And that's something I want to address too, and I know a lot of the women already did here on the panel, because is it really possible for a woman to have it all? Isn't that always the big question? But I'm here and I'm extremely grateful and very nervous, as you can tell. And because you're here, I'm going to guess that you probably have goals, you have dreams, and you want to succeed. Me too. And when you walked through the door today, you took an important step, because one of the things I've learned over the last 20-something years is the hardest step is the first one you have to make through a door. Because doors are terrifying. They're terrifying. Any children of immigrants here today? I know before she was talking about being a child of an immigrant. Anybody else? Where are your parents from?
Cuba.
From Cuba. Anybody else here actually an immigrant too? Where are your parents from?
Brazil.
From Brazil. Okay, so you're gonna relate to what I'm saying a lot. My parents were born and raised in Italy. So they came here when they were teenagers. And I always say they came over on the boat, but they remind me that it was the 70s and they came on a plane just like everybody else. But I like to mess with them, and I tell my daughters that no, came over on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. I think it's hilarious. They do not think so. But my grandparents decided to pack up their children and come to America for a better life. And they were the definition of the American dream. They worked on farms in Italy, they had very little money, they were uneducated, but they believed they had a better shot for their kids in the US. So when I was a kid and I would complain to my dad about having to share a bathroom with my brother or my sister, he would remind me that he had to share a bed with his brothers. Zio Frank, Zio Mario, Zio Tonino, Zio Giovanni, and Zio Damiano, all of them. And he was the youngest, so he was lucky to be able to spend one night a week in the actual bed. Usually he was on the floor. Perspective, right? Puts things into perspective. And there's a lot of good and bad that comes along with being a child of immigrants. You're not afraid of hard work, because for most of us, our parents did a lot of physical hard work to make money. My parents opened a small pizza place, and they worked constantly. I spent my Friday and Saturday nights sleeping on those hard pizza boxes in the storage room until the evening rush was finally over and we could go home. And I guess the only plus side is that my brother and my sister, we all got our own pizza box to sleep on, so we didn't have to share one bed like my dad did with all of my uncles. But I never took for granted the value of a dollar because I saw firsthand what it took to earn one. And, then there's the bad stuff. A lot of times, and I know you too can probably relate to this, my immigrant parents did not understand American culture. And that can be difficult when you're just a regular Connecticut girl growing up in the 80s and you think you're just like everybody else, right? I couldn't understand why my parents weren't more like the parents on Growing Pains. And they were cool and normal. Like I was like, man, is that what normal American parents are like? And I only have like a few very vivid memories from my childhood, but it's remarkable how about when I look back on them now, how much they really shaped who I was then and who I am now. So I remember, and this is 100% a true story, on the first day of kindergarten, I was standing outside the door, and my mom, she got down on her, down so she could look me in the eye, and she told me not to raise my hand, because if I didn't raise my hand, I wouldn't embarrass myself if I got the answer wrong. Let me repeat that. My mom told me not to raise my hand in school. Isn't that wild? As a parent right now, can you imagine telling your child, don't raise your hand at school? Now, if she was in this room right now, she would cringe, she would die. She'd be like, why did you even say that out loud? Like, what's wrong with you? Because it's ridiculous. But my parents were so young. They were married at 18. I was born a little over a year later, and they were adapting to an American life where they had to learn a new language, and their goal was just to blend in. They just wanted to blend in. So if you didn't raise your hand and you didn't say anything, you blended in with everybody else, right? Now, it took me such a long time to raise my hand in school, but I soon realized that the world wouldn't end if I answered a question incorrectly, and I liked being part of the discussion. We talked about being part of the discussion. Nicole always says that. I liked it. And if you raised your hand, even if you didn't know the answer, you would get participation points. And I wasn't the smartest in school, so that I needed every extra point I could get. And I caused my mother a ton of anxiety because I was never going to be the quiet girl in the back of the classroom. And I'll never forget that feeling of fear deep inside my chest walking into that kindergarten classroom door for the very first time because it was new and it was scary. And I said it before and I'll say it again, doors are terrifying. And it doesn't matter if you're 5 years old going into a classroom for the first time or 42 years old walking into a networking event and giving a keynote speech for the very first time. You don't know what's on the other side of that door. Something great can be waiting for you, or maybe not. It's the fear of the unknown. And that day in kindergarten, all I knew about school was not to raise my hand and I was scared. So speaking of memories, every comedian remembers the very first time they got a laugh. And I was in first grade, and we used to eat our lunch in our classroom. And I had this purple fabric lunchbox. And right in the middle of lunch, for God knows what reason, who knows, I put the lunchbox on my head, and everybody at the table erupted in laughter. And even the teacher smiled before she told me to, take it off. And I loved that I could make a room full of people laugh. And as far as I was concerned, from that point on, I was 6 years old and I was Joe Rivers. Now, being from immigrant parents, no one in my family had ever gone to college. And truthfully, they didn't expect me to go either. I didn't have that pressure because it was something that they didn't really know anything about. So I actually started a semester late because I had planned to go to Catherine Gibbs Secretarial School in Norwalk to be a secretary. Does anybody remember that place?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
My mom and dad thought that was great. They thought it was the greatest thing in the whole. Anna, you'll be a great secretary. All right, cool. Now, the day before I was going to start classes, I had a panic attack because all my friends were going to these great colleges all over the country. They were getting ready to study psychology and anthropology and communications, and I was going to learn shorthand. Now imagine how pissed you are right now if you committed years of your life to learning shorthand and you can just yell out, Alexa, write this down, right? Now don't get me wrong, I can type 95 words a minute. I am good at that. I've got amazing accuracy. And I know a lot of administrators in the corporate field that make more money than I do, right? But it's not what I had envisioned for my own career. So I took a semester off to work at a call center that scammed people out of hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy out-of-print CDs. This is a true story. In my defense, I didn't know we were scamming people until years later, but that's exactly what was happening. Shout out to every CD call center in Stanford. And I want to say congratulations to all the customers that eventually won that lawsuit. It was so strange. I was selling Duran Duran CDs for a penny. That's what my job was. But what they were doing was like overcharging all their credit cards. It's crazy looking back on it that I was part of it. True story, that's what happened. But while I was working in this call center, head thing, 100 of us sitting in a row, I was also applying to colleges. And like most things in my life, I was doing it late. Everybody had already done this, and I had already graduated high school, but whatever. I ended up at Pace University in New York, not because it was a good fit, but because it was only 45 minutes away, and I convinced my parents that I could go away to school if I could come home on the weekends and work at the restaurants. And it was the only college that accepted me. It was my safety, which is the irony of that, right? Well, thank God I applied there. Now, ironically, the reason why I applied there was because I heard an ad on the radio about it. So remember that. Radio advertising works. So again, here's all these new doors, this time at college. And I wasn't allowed to sleep over at anyone's house growing up. It's like a weird Italian thing. Apparently like they're for like sinners and heathens, and who knows what happens when you sleep over at a friend's house. So walking through the dorm door for the first time to live with a stranger was terrifying. And that's where I met Christina, my first roommate, and to this day, one of my very best friends. That dorm door will always be one of my favorite doors, and I remember being so scared to have to live on my own with a stranger. But walking through a classroom door for my very first class was scary too. Was I going to be smart enough? Could I handle the work? That devil was right there, telling me I couldn't do it the whole time. But like most of you, I just did it. You just do it, right? You kept walking through the doors. You kept raising your hand. You just kept going. And also, probably like most of you, the path isn't always a straight line, no matter how much you want it to be. I wish I could say that I got a radio job out of college, worked my way up, and here I am. But it was actually nothing like that at all. Radio and comedy were always my first loves. And like a lot of people in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was obsessed with Howard Stern, and his home station was K-Rock Radio out of New York City. So I told the devil on my shoulder that I had nothing to lose by just applying for an internship. And I was shocked when I was called in for an interview. In retrospect, it's because they don't pay their interns and they basically will take anybody, but at the time it was a big deal. But I remember standing at that iconic door at 40 West 57th Street in Manhattan. I had never been more terrified of a door in my entire life. And it was a revolving door. At the time, it felt like this could be a make or break moment of my life. And looking back on it, it kind of was. Now this is where my radio career takes off and blah, 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 syndicated radio, national host, lots of stations, kick-ass woman, right? Not even close. After my internship, it was so glamorous. I would have to organize t-shirts in the prize closet and glue notes to index cards for the jocks. I was hired as the program director's assistant as my first real job there. And truthfully, it was a big deal to answer his phone. Ironically, I somehow ended up with a job as a secretary, even though I purposely didn't go to the secretarial school. I had a college degree, and I was still filing stuff. The irony was not wasted on me. But I wanted to be on the air. I always wanted to be on the air. And a lot of the successful jocks were men. Women were either the midday girl that would say one line every 4 songs, or they were the giggle tracks to the male lead on the morning shows. And I want to explain what a giggle girl, if you're not in the industry, you might not be familiar, but you could probably figure it out. The male jock says something, and no matter what it is, you laugh like it is the funniest thing you ever heard. That's a real thing. And sadly, there are a lot of markets across this country that is still the formula. I've been working on that. Because there's a stigma out there that women aren't funny, right? Looking back, it's a good thing I quit secretarial school because I was a terrible assistant. I hung up on Bon Jovi. Twice. I could never figure out how to transfer calls. I hated filing anything, and I swear I can't even begin to tell you how many times I broke the copier. To this day, I have to call engineering at work when the printer cartridge runs out of ink in the studio. Steve can attest to the problems I have there. Raven was just yelling at me today because I broke the printer again this morning. And one day, I went to my boss at K-Rock, the program director, who was in charge of all the jobs, and I begged him to help me get on the air. And you know what he said to me? He told me that jocks have to move all around the country, and they have to work at terrible small stations. They make no money, and they struggle for failed careers. He told me that I was a smart girl, and he would walk me upstairs to the sales department, and he knew that I would succeed there. I would make a lot of money, and I would be able to stay close to my family. Now, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "No person has the right to rain on your dreams," and he didn't rain on my dreams. He full-on summoned a hurricane. Because this was one of the most powerful men in radio, and he was talking from the heart. I can't even be mad at him about it, because I know that at the time, he was probably right and believed he was giving me great advice. And here's the problem. I didn't want to sell radio. I wanted to be on the radio. So I quit. Well, technically, I quit twice. The first time I tried to quit, he told me to go back to my desk and that he wouldn't let me. And then 3 weeks later, I worked up the nerve to go in and quit again, and I stood my ground. Radio's a really weird place. Things like that happen all the time. So now, I'm 22, I'm jobless, I've had my dream shot down, and I don't know what to do. So I go to my parents, and my dad says to me, "Hi, Anna, you should be a teacher. That's a nice job to have." I don't know, my parents never understood why I wanted to be an entertainer. As far as they were concerned, it wasn't a real career. And as the first person in my family to graduate from college, why would I want to waste time on this dumb dream that get paid so little money, right? So I went to Sacred Heart University, and I took classes at night. I waitressed during the day. I earned my master's in teaching, secondary English education, and I was a high school teacher now. Yay! So I'm 24 years old, and I'm teaching at West Hill High School in Stamford.
Woohoo! Vikings!
Woo! And then it dawned on me, oh my God, I really hate this. Yeah. And I don't know if you guys know this, but teenagers are terrible. So, I'm kidding. I can see that because I have a 13-year-old right now. But the truth of the matter is that I liked teaching. I don't think that at 24 years old I belonged in a high school classroom. I was teaching seniors at the time. They were like 17, 18 years old. I got asked to prom twice. It's so awkward. But I remember thinking, I was never scared walking through the door to get my master's degree. I wasn't scared when I started teaching high school. I wasn't scared to open the first door of my first classroom. And another thing I've learned over the years is that if the door doesn't scare you, it's not worth opening. Because remember how I said before, it's not a straight path? I told my parents I didn't want to teach anymore. So my dad told me to become a realtor because he was going to flip houses and I can make a lot of money that way. I know, Anna. You got a master's. How hard can it be to get a realtor's license? Go do that. Okay. So I got my real estate license. I know. You're like, when does this end? It never ends. It never ends. I opened a lot of front doors for other people. Literally, lots of front doors. None of them were for my career or for my happiness. But he was right. I made good money. I was never happy. It just wasn't for me. And I always did things on the side to keep my creativity happy. I'm like the master of the side hustle. I was an extra on Law and Order for a little bit. You may remember me as girl eating hot dog on New York City side street. I did stand-up comedy, and I performed at some of the biggest clubs in New York City, but I never really caught on or got a big break or anything like that. And all the while, I was waitressing at my parents' restaurants trying to make ends meet. I got Zumba certified so I could teach dance classes and make some extra cash on the side. I figured I needed to work out anyway, so I might as well get paid to do it. And I was really, really good at twerking. Right, Lisa? Yeah. That's the thing about us immigrant kids. We work, and we work hard. But on my 30th birthday, I had a breakdown. A literal breakdown. We were on our way to Ocean City, Maryland for a vacation, and it was my turn to drive. My husband was sleeping in the passenger seat. Hayden, my older daughter, who was 1 year old at the time, she was sound asleep in her car seat. And as the clock struck midnight, Fergie's song, Big Girls Don't Cry, came on the radio. Of course, right? So I had to pull over the car in the next damn cornfield because I couldn't see through my tears. I was like like when you're crying so hard that you can't breathe, you can't catch yourself? It was like that kind of crying. My husband woke up in a full panic because he thought I had God only knows what I'd run over and killed. I realized I was happily married and I'm lucky for all this. I had a beautiful 1-year-old daughter, but I wasn't doing or succeeding at a damn thing I had dreamed of. Not career-wise anyway. And then I saw an ad on Craigslist for a part-time jock position at 95.9 The Fox. Craigslist. So I figured I had nothing to lose. I told that stupid devil on my shoulder, what's going to possibly happen that I haven't done already at this time? I've got nothing to lose at this point. So I sent my resume in a fake demo that my brother helped me make. And talk about being terrified of doors. Walking into that radio station in Norwalk, I had never been so nervous in my life. Turns out the program director was also a huge K-Rock fan, and he had never gotten a resume before with K-Rock on it. Boom! Right there. Sometimes the stars align. The money was absolute crap, and I would be giving up a semi-successful real estate career, but I believed I could prove myself. And there were plenty of times that the devil on my shoulder reminded me of how stupid I was to do this. Plenty of times. Finally, my path started taking more of a direct route, but it came with a lot of sacrifice. I worked part-time on the Fox, proved myself, and then they put me in as a fill-in personality on 99.1 PLR. I did pretty good there, so I started doing weekends on Star 99.9. Hey, not bad. Did I want to do the overnight shift on Star? Let me explain here, so I know most of you are not in radio. Overnight shifts back in the day are like when you're starting out in radio. I was a 31-year-old mother with a 2-year-old at home. And doing overnights was going to be a massive sacrifice for my family. My husband sacrificed a lot for me to chase my dreams. Weekends when I was never around, because I was on the air or hosting an event, God knows where, hours away. But sometimes you have to raise your hand even if you don't want to. And I did it. And then after a while working overnights, it turned into regular night shifts, and that wasn't so bad. Now I know you're thinking, God, is this over yet? Because I know there's wine out there and you're ready for it. Is that when everything started to get more streamlined? Well, like I said, nothing is a straight path. And I want you to know that I got turned down for a full-time position for a mic on the morning show, not once, not twice, not 3 times. 4th time was a charm in my case. And once I got the morning show, guess what? Great news, guys. I was the giggle girl. Yep. It was the guy's show. He was the funny one, not me. And he would complain if I didn't giggle enough. All right. But I'm not here to criticize anybody, because he moved on to a bigger market, he's fine. And then another male lead was hired, and we became the big Jim and Anna show. I don't know if any of you guys remember that. And Jim let me be funny. He let me have a voice on the show, and finally I could show what I could do. And then he too left for a bigger market, and I was sad to see him go because he was like a brother to me and still is. Now, one of the hardest parts about being part of a successful team is how hard it is to start over. Because remember, like, Raymond and I don't just sound this way because we've known each other our whole lives. It takes chemistry, and it takes time, and it takes building, and it takes trust. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. And that's when Raven arrived, and the Anna and Raven show was finally born. I wrote here, pause for applause, so if you guys want to... But walking through the studio door, it's a studio door I've walked through a million times before, but when you're the lead, it's terrifying, because if that show fails, it's on you. It's on you. And you know, they say girls aren't funny. So I had a lot to work on it to do. But I got a team that believes in me. They helped me, and to this day has always got my back. And we started doing really well in the ratings. Long story short, I know I've been rambling for a while now. After 5 years on the air together, we performed really well, and they added us to Walk 97.5 on Long Island. And I thought my dreams had come true at that point. But then we got a call a year later from our CEO of our company, and he wanted to meet with us. And of course, despite the good ratings and the devil on my shoulder always telling me I'm not good enough, I started to panic, because I was like, the CEO wants to meet with you. Why do our minds go to this is going to be bad, not this is going to be good, right? That was the first thing I thought. And I was thinking about that devil. Told you weren't funny enough. You should have stayed in real estate. You should have listened to your dad. He was right, you know. And I remember sitting down with him, and he told us that they had partnered with Compass Media, which is a syndication company, and they were going to nationally syndicate the Anna and Raven show. We're currently on 40 stations, from Sitka, Alaska to Miami, Florida. I'm incredibly proud to say that I'm one of the few female lead radio shows in the country. And my parents finally stopped giving me a hard time about not having a real job. So you would think this is my happily ever after, right? No, because that's the thing about finding your passion. It keeps evolving. Now, every time I hear that our ratings aren't great in some Midwestern town, there's that devil on your shoulder that starts telling you, well, why? You know, what did you do wrong? And every time we spend hours pitching our show to a new affiliate and they don't go with us, there's that devil laughing in my face. And I spent a lot of time telling that little jerk to shut up and to go away. I think that's normal, though, right? I think what I've done is I've learned to make it a priority to remind myself that the devil isn't there to tell me what I can't do. He's there to taunt me and to make sure I do all the things that I know I can do, because I have to prove him wrong. So that's where I am now. So now where does the journey take me next? Now I don't know. What I do know is that ever since I've had that lunchbox on my head, I want to make people laugh, and I love that, and I want to keep doing it. But the question that I said at the beginning is, can women have it all? And like you all know, it comes with sacrifice. There's a reason why so many women quit their careers during the pandemic. And like the panel was talking about earlier, we're moms, we're wives, we're homemakers. And I'm not diminishing men's roles in any of these things, but there's a lot of hard decisions I had to make to follow my passions. I'm lucky that I have a supportive husband to help me achieve my dreams while chasing his own. But I have never been to drop off on the first day of school for my kids. That's just a reality. My maternity leave with my youngest was 6.5 weeks, and I had a C-section because I had to get back to the show. I've missed soccer games, family parties, and tons more because my dreams were calling and I was raising my hand and walking through the door. Now, I don't regret the decisions I've made because I don't think you can have it all, but I do think you can have a little bit of everything, right? And for me, that's what satisfies my soul. So my biggest challenge right now, what's next, is finding the balance, that word balance we keep hearing over and over. Because I don't want to miss recitals anymore, and I want to be able to continue doing what I'm passionate about. I want to continue to add more stations. I want to continue to growing our brand. I want to continue to wake you up in the morning and hopefully make you laugh on your way to work and dropping off your kids at school or your grandkids or whatever it is. And as someone that's been a comedian, an English teacher, a Zumba instructor, a waiter, a realtor, an incredible girl eating hot dog on the side of a New York City street, former Giggle Girl, now nationally syndicated radio host, I think it's safe to say that finding your passion isn't a one-time thing, it's a lifetime thing. And finding what excites you is what's next. So what's going to be behind that next scary door? I've learned it's okay to figure it out. Accepting failures as learning opportunities, that's a good thing. Telling that devil to get off your damn shoulder, and raising your hand, even if you might embarrass yourself. It's all going to be all right. Again, I want to thank the Greater Valley Chamber of Commerce for hosting such an important event, because let's remember, what we're here today doing is raising funds for more women to follow and achieve their dreams so they can walk through their doors and raise their hands. Thank you guys for all.